Alrighty, guys. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the trends and the environment. Okay. So now that we mapped out the niche, we know exactly who we're going after. We also need to understand the current trends and the environment. Now, this is super, super important, and this explains timing. You know how a lot of companies, they say, oh, we got the timing wrong. And even Steve Blank, he makes a, let me just draw this out real quick here. So Steve Blank, and I love Steve Blank, by the way, the author of the 4 Steps to the Epiphany, he describes the startup curve like this, okay? And it's usually like year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, okay? And he compares this curve to this curve, okay? A lot of entrepreneurs just do this curve and they don't get any, and this is revenue or earnings, right? Okay? So Steve says, okay, well, it's usually like year 1, year 2, year 3, and you're kind of puttering along and you're figuring things out, and then year 4 you start taking off. And sometimes you don't actually hit that inflection point and you just, you run out of money and you're done. Okay. Now, I love Steve and he has some great points. I love his work and I love his market segmentation. I love his strategies on customer development. A lot of my stuff is influenced by Steve. Okay. However, I definitely don't think the 4-year thing is I think we can compress this a lot, okay? And the reason is because, this is a technologist's curve, right? The technologist uses these technologies, these environments. Maybe there's a new technology that comes around. There's a new tool that comes around. There's new information that comes around, but they're unable to match it to a customer's desire. Okay. And sometimes it takes them years to figure out how that technology is useful. And that's when they hit that point of inflection. Okay. So for us, in order to shortcut this process, in order to compress this, instead of 4 years inflection point, we want to do it in the first year. Okay. We want like this. Okay. We want to do this in the first year. So in order to do that, we really have to start with the customer. Okay. We got to start with who are we helping, and then we bust our butt to figure out what technologies are available, what trends in the market, what winds are blowing in the market that allow us to solve one of these problems. You see how these failures here? There's failures that these customers have, and they have urgency level 1 failures. They have urgency level 3 failures. So they have very painful problems. Now we have to figure out, okay, well, what's in the realm of possibilities? I understand this customer has a really, really urgent problem. Now, can I actually solve it? So this section is, let's look at the trends. Let's look at the technology. This is where you get into the research. Okay. This is a CEO or a founder's job. Okay. Let's get into what's going on in the world, what winds are blowing, what new technologies are emerging, what competitor products are out there. Okay. So we're going to be really focusing on just collecting information and getting the full picture, because if we can intersect, this is one of the points that I made in another video. So if we can intersect the customer's path and the environment's paths, then we'll be able to we'll be able to find a fit. Okay. So let's remove this for a second here. So let's assume that the customer is traveling along this path. Okay. These little paths, and they're going, they're moving around, and this is their path through time. Okay. This is their position. Okay. And this is time. Okay. So they're moving around. Now, environments, if we understand the environment, so this is in a vacuum, okay? Let's say the customer, they're just moving around. The environment is acting on this customer, okay? So if there's a new technology, if there's a new competitor, if there's a new trend, there's new regulation, there's new rules, let's say there's a natural disaster, a war, a famine, a virus, something, it affects this customer's position, okay? Okay, so let's say at time is equal to like 1 year, okay? And you're starting from time 0, which is your reference point, 1 year, you know that something, a technology is going to be introduced and there's going to be some sort of force on that customer at that time. And then maybe there's a regulation and there's going to be another force on that customer at that time. Okay. Or maybe there's a new competitor and there's going to be a force on that customer at that time. So these forces, you not only need to understand the customer's path and who they are and what they're struggling with and what their desires are, but you also need to understand the forces that act on the customer. And this is what the environment is. Okay? So there's a new regulation. All of a sudden, there's a force that acts on the customer. There's a new technology, force, right? There's a virus, force, right? There's a grant, or the government, there's a new regulation as far as funding, or there's new tax rules. There's going to be forces on the customer. Okay. So it's very important to not only understand the customer's path as they're traveling through time, the customer's position as they're traveling through time. Okay. But it's also really important to understand the environments and the forces acting on the customer at that time. And if you truly understand the forces acting on the customer, okay, and the customer, you'll get your timing right, okay? Because you can pick someone up right here. You can pick someone up right here. You can become the best or only option if you understand the whole system. Does that make sense, guys? So the reason why Steve Blank probably is very familiar with this curve, right? It takes 4 years. It's because a lot of the times these technologists, they either understand the technology or the forces, but they don't understand the customer path, so they can't time it right. Okay, so they end up spending 4 years swimming around in uncertain soils, and they're like, well, who do we actually help? Who's our actual customer? And it's because they're trying to figure out the intersection point. Okay, and sometimes it takes 4 years or 3 years or 5 years to figure out that intersection point. We have customers who spend 10, 12 years before they hit a point of like actual real return on their capital. Okay, so for us, we want to compress that. And in order to compress that, we not only need to understand the customer's path, but we also need to understand the forces acting on the customer. Okay, and we do that. This is not a lazy person, a lazy entrepreneur cannot do this. Okay, this is intellectually challenging. Okay, and it takes focus and it takes a lot of research. Okay, so not only do we understand our customer, which takes a lot of research, but we also need to understand the environments going on, and then we're going to be able to craft solutions. Okay, we're going to be able to craft solutions that fit, and you'll notice when you find the fit, when you find the intersection point, okay, the customer is going to get immediately interested and immediately wants to be your customer. That's the key. There's a fit, okay? You find product market fit, okay? You're the best or only option relative to your customer, okay? At time equals whatever time you are operating at, okay? And keep in mind, because this is time dependent, what worked over here might not necessarily work over here, okay? At year 1 might not necessarily work at year 2. Okay, let's say there's a pandemic going on, right? Like currently there's a lot of turbulence going on in the market. Okay, what worked last year might not necessarily work here. Okay, so as the entrepreneur, we need to be very, very aware of the environment and the forces acting on the environment. Okay, and so what we do is we do research. We look at blogs. And I love looking at source texts. I love looking at real data, okay? Because it's like playing broken telephone. You guys ever play broken telephone as in kindergarten? Okay, maybe your kids are playing broken telephone right now. A lot of the times, the data that's reported into the media is not right, okay? It's the interpretation of the author, and the author is incentivized for views and relevance, and like they need attention, okay? The scientist is incentivized for accuracy, okay? So the worst thing a scientist can be is wrong. The worst thing a media person can be or a publisher can be is ignored, okay? So when you're doing your research, try not to go to the blogs, where the motives of the author are either selling ads or selling a product. You want to go directly to the data source, okay? Go directly to the scientific studies. Go directly to do your own research, Okay. Like a good example is like Google Trends, right? Google Trends, you can do your own research and you can take a look at trends. Okay. You can just, this is so useful, right? Like if we did B2B SaaS, right? Let's take a look at B2B SaaS. And we look at this over the past 5 years, okay? We can see countries and territories that are more likely to be interested in this trend here. Let's take a look. 2004 to present. So you can see a increase, okay? You can type in anything. Google is a very, very powerful tool. You can conduct your own research and figure out what people are searching, what other products are in the market. We can take a look at the inception of different products, the inception dates of the products, and we can compare that. We can make a trend and be like, okay, so now all of a sudden there's all of these tools available to customers. You can do your own experiment. You can do your own survey. You can do your own, ask your customers questions and come up with your own research, come up with your own experiments, okay, to try and get the truths, okay? Try to get the most accurate data. Now, so the name of the game is if you understand the customer and their desires, and at the same time, you understand the truth, the environment forces, okay, then it's very, very easy to create useful things. It's very easy to be useful, okay? So take that and see if you can go deep. Get people to help you. Get the smartest people on your team to help you research. Get the smartest people on your team to help you with the experiments, okay? And you probably, as a founder who already has a tool that's already working, you probably have already done this work, okay? But for a new founder, this is really, really important. And as an existing founder with a product, this is an activity that never stops, okay? This is an activity that you spend a lot of your time in research mode. If you're CEO, you spend a lot of your time reading and gathering information in the environment, okay? So those are my thoughts on the environment. So definitely take some time and start researching. And once you have the customer, so once you have these two things solved, right? You have your niche and you have your environment solved, or you have a good idea, it's gonna, a problem and a product is gonna be staring at you right in the face, okay? It's going to be so blatantly obvious what you should focus on. You're going to be looking at the most urgent problem, and then you're going to be like, holy crap, no one's ever solved this, and there's this new technology that's available to solve this. Why isn't everyone doing it? Why, am I the only person doing this? Am I the only person who knows this? Okay? And that actually, that little tangent brings me to Peter Thiel. Peter says the best companies are founded on secrets. What do you know to be true that other people either don't know yet or are unwilling to admit? Okay? And when you have the niche and the environment mapped out, the secrets are revealed. Okay? You're the only one in the meadow who knows what the truth. Okay? So this will allow you to determine secrets. So let's give you an example. The secret. Let's give a secret, Airbnb secret. Excuse me. Airbnb knew who their customer was, okay? There was people who were traveling for events. And they also knew they had a secret that people were willing to stay in strangers' houses. And that was counterintuitive. And a lot of people rejected that idea. They said, there's no way people are going to be staying in other people's houses, right? There's no way that you're going to stay in a stranger's house, okay? But what the founders of Airbnb knew through experiment, okay, they knew that strangers were willing to let people were willing to let strangers in a house if they paid them, and the customers were willing to stay in a stranger's house if it was cheaper than a hotel. So that was a secret that they knew, and they wouldn't have known that if they didn't run their own experiments. They wouldn't have known that if they didn't understand the customer, and they wouldn't have been able to combat the general sentiment, okay, that led to such a great idea as a business. Okay. So it pays, my point is that it pays to go deep and it pays to understand the market. This even goes for us. I know my customer so well. Okay. I know my customer so well. It's the entrepreneur. It's the tech person. They're usually very smart. They're technical. Okay. And I also know what's going on in the market. There's so many entrepreneurs who are not making profits. There's so many entrepreneurs who are trying to get on the cover of magazines and trying to be these tech moguls. But if you look at the cash flow, or even the net present value of the future cash flow, it's not anything. It's like a big fugazi. Okay. And I know the truth. The truth is that these entrepreneurs, they want to make durable business and they want to accumulate capital. And that's the strategy on doing that is not what has worked in the last 10 years. The strategy is not raising a bunch of money and doing a bunch of BS. That is not the strategy. Okay. I know that the development skills are readily available. You can take an online course and you learn development skills. I know that investors are only going to tolerate negative earnings for so long. Eventually the chickens are going to come home and they're going to wake up and say, well, I need earnings. Okay. Eventually that's going to happen. So it's my job to help the entrepreneur navigate that environment and help them as much as possible. I understand them so well and I understand the environment so well that I'm able to help them. Okay. Now for you, it could be something different, right? You understand your customer and you understand the environment. Okay. And there's just a obvious solution. There's a problem that's so obvious to solve, and it aligns to the urgency level number one problem of your customer. And it's just going to be super, super obvious. Okay. So take some time and start doing the research. And you want to combine the research with the niche identification. Okay. So as you're out there, you're gathering your data. You're gathering data on the customer's behavior, and you're also gathering data on the environment. And you're running these little tiny experiments to try to get the truth. Okay. So those are my notes on environment. And in the next video, we're going to be talking about the claim. Okay. And actually how to test your hypotheses.